All right, good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The appointed hour has arrived. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask if I could to get Chairman Dean Green, if he would, to lead us in an invocation. Chairman Green.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, as we begin the deliberations of this day, may we be mindful of the responsibility that we have to the citizens of the state of Georgia. And Lord, be with us and guide us and direct us. And Lord, we just pray for those individuals that are out there protecting us, those that are servicemen, those that are law enforcement. We pray for them and their families. Be with us, O Lord, as we are away from our families. Guide us and direct us and bless us now, Father. And we ask all of this in thy holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. If everybody just come on in and make yourself at home, we're going to settle into this meeting and we're going to hear, first off, House Bill 268 by my good friend and fellow chairman, John Corbett. There's a little bill in your committee that I have some interest in, and I want to give you my undivided attention right here, Mr. Chairman.
Feeling is mutual.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
Can we get you anything to drink? we want to treat you like family, or better than family, right here today.
Amen. Well, I hope you got that same impression when you presented
Absolutely.
Your bill yesterday,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So
Everybody got a copy of the bill here? House Bill 268, LC 393692 is what we're working off of. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
that is the correct bill number and LC number, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You've already discussed the bill number and LC number. You know what this bill does is we're establishing the Georgia Motor Vehicle Crime Advisory Board. The advisory board will review applications and make recommendations to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council that will then establish a grant program and provide grants to local law enforcement agencies to help them address auto crimes. Here in the 9 years I've been in Atlanta, of course it's not isolated just to Atlanta, this is statewide, we're having these issues, but local law enforcement agencies is just, they're grappling with the issue of these auto theft crimes, and especially when it comes to catalytic converters. I know last year we passed this bill out, passed it out of the House, and the day I had it on the House floor, we had a fellow representative that had his catalytic converter cut off that night, the night before we presented the bill. It cost him, it didn't cost him, it cost his insurance company $4,000 to replace that catalytic converter, on his truck. For somebody they stole it off, and they might get $50 worth of material out of the thing when they sell it. So it's a huge cost. Right now we've got laws on the books when it comes to our metal recyclers. We've probably got some of the toughest, most robust laws in the nation. The issue is not around these recyclers that we have in the state that are licensed. When somebody goes to sell something there, you got to present your driver's license, ID number. They cannot pay cash. The issue we're having in the state, and it's statewide. You have people advertising online that they're buying catalytic converters, and they show up at a Walmart parking lot, and they'll give them cash for it, and then they go across the state line or somewhere to sell this. So the common handicap that we have with our law enforcement is broadband issues. When I say broadband, it's not enough men, technology, equipment to actually commit to trying to keep dedicated just to this one problem. So the purpose of this commission is to tackle this bandwidth handicap by establishing and operating a statewide program whose mission is to provide funds and capabilities to local law enforcement agencies throughout the state dedicated to reducing vehicle crimes. This commission will be modeled after Auto Theft Prevention Authority programs that's been established in other states that have been proven to have good results in these other states. You got Maryland, Virginia, Colorado, and Texas, just to name a few that's had very good success with this type of program. And we've taken the good parts from the legislation that they have and incorporated it into 268. In Colorado alone, like in 2020, 84% of all reported stolen vehicles were recovered, and that's well above the national average of 56%.
Was that before or after they legalized marijuana?
Now, a good question. Not sure. But anyway, what we're going to do here, once these funds or grants become available, we're going to fund local law enforcement agencies for investigations, and they can include things: vehicle theft, parts theft, fraud related to motor vehicle insurance, auto dealer, rental purchase, and other forms of financial fraud. Provide funds to local law enforcement agencies for training purposes, provide funds to local law enforcement for technology to help aid investigation and prevent motor vehicle crimes, potential funding for multi-jurisdictional, because a lot of times this is happening, in multiple counties. That way you can set up a sting or task force coordinated between, 2 or 3 different counties if needed. I want to go and we'll talk about the bill, and we've got several people that's lined up that would love to speak to the bill. So let's walk through the bill. On page 1, lines 15 through 40, what we're doing here, and this is subject to available funding. We're going to establish a grant program, and the provision and funds of this grants be to local law enforcement agencies, and specifies what these funds can be used for, and that's lines 15 through 40. All right, line 41 through 62, any grant that's awarded it has to be recommended, to the council by the Georgia Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Advisory Board. And in each grant, has to describe, what motor vehicle related crime prevention that they are attempting to address in application for this grant. But it gives things on 46 through 62 that it may include, but it's not limited just to this list. So 63 through 67, to the extent possible, these grants will be distributed among a variety of geographical areas. Basically try to get them in all parts of the state, not just limited to one particular area. 68 through 72, the council may accept federal funds, gifts, donations, but the acceptance of these federal funds, does not obligate the state to appropriate any funds. This is on being able to see federal grants or private donations. This is where this funding will come from. And Louisiana has a program where it is completely funded by grants and private donations. So there's a model out there where this works. 73 through 76, the council just will be able to recommend to the governor or this General Assembly of any improvements they can see that we can make to existing laws to help prevent motor vehicle crimes. Then 78 through 120, we established the Georgia Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Advisory Board. It makes the makeup of the board, the terms, filling of vacancies, and compensation, and that's what we're doing through 78 through 120. All right, and 121 through 123, it just states the Georgia Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Advisory Board shall solicit and review applications for grants and then make recommendations to the council. And then the last section in the bill is just basic cleanup language that Ledge Council did on lines 127, where you inserted a Juvenile Justice Advisory Board, just to make a distinction between, we're creating a board, and this in language in 127 it had an advisory board. This just cleans it up to differentiate between the advisory board we're creating and the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board.
Okay.
That's what we're doing with the bill. We're trying to, like I say, address an issue that has become a huge problem. And it's not just here in Atlanta. You hear it even down in rural Georgia where I'm at. If somebody leaves a car parked out the side of a business, when you come back the next morning, it sounds like you got your straight pipes. They have relieved you of your catalytic converter. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, if it please the committee, I would like for the ones that signed up to speak to the bill, or I'll try to answer any questions.
Absolutely. Let me ask any members of the committee to have any questions from the author of the bill before we get started. My board's lit up right here. Would you like to take questions now, or do you want to take them?
We can. If I can't answer, I might need a lifeline, but yes.
Okay. Number 16 over there.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Frazier.
Yes. Chairman Corbett, I just had a couple of questions. You did answer the one as it relates to where the grant dollars would come from, which will be federal.
Federal grants that the advisory board, they
That's
will
fine.
apply for, or private donations. You've got some pretty big corporations. I think some of them will be speaking today that have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. You get some of these rental companies that has I don't know, a fleet of vehicles parked on their lot. They'll come back over the weekend and somebody's cut all the catalytic converters off. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm actually from Louisiana, so we've been doing this, but we got a lot of private funding to do this. My question is to you also is this: the Georgia Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Advisory Board, is that a board that will have a sunset date, or when we get? I know there will always be still in Cadillac convertible, well, whatever you call them.
yeah. There's no sunset in this bill.
So this
When
board,
Gabriel blows his trumpet.
Yeah, as long as there's available funding, as long as we've got
so
available.
this is a year-to-year grant application process where this board will be funded by either federal grants or private
donations.
or private donations.
Right, or unless
And-
we decide to do something else.
Right,
But
and
yes.
so now where is the oversight where we can?
For administrative purposes, it will be, if you look in line 2 of the explanations, it will be housed in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. That's where the administration will take place. As far as the accounting, the money will flow through them. The board would make recommendations to them, and then they will issue the grants from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
Final question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, ma'am.
When will we know, and I know you probably have to let this probably get started in maybe about a year. When will this, the House of Representatives, this committee know the progress that have been made?
Yeah, and that's,
Will it take about a year?
I would say it's probably going to take at least a year for you to apply for the grants, receive the grants, and start getting them out into the field. But I think that might be a good addition to the bill, where we put a requirement that we get a report back from this board.
I think so.
Of
I
what they're doing with the money. So I like that recommendation.
All right, number 19, who we have there?
Chairman.
Representative Sains.
I am no surprised my former fellow delegation mate would bring such a timely bill. I would have thought this would be unnecessary until last week, and I would guess I'm lucky to have my catalytic converter still, but I don't have a couple of stuff after at Grant Park. Several cars got broken into and valuables got stolen. So would this bill help the victims like me or future victims in the Atlanta area and across the state? Those departments who are investigating those crimes have added resources to solve the perpetration?
Right, they'd have money to solve it, but they also have money in here in the explanation as far as being able to train individuals on how to best try to avoid these, where to park and where not to park, and there'll be a training aspect of this as well. And it also help train first-time offenders to hopefully help them get on the right path as well.
I was near your neighborhood, so it's probably pretty shady to have been there.
Thank you for the
Got
question.
One more question for the author of the bill, number 25. Who is that? Representative
Yeah.
Evans, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just want to say I like this bill. I like the emphasis on prevention and reduction of crime, and the emphasis on the public awareness campaigns. I would. So you're saying that the grant money will come from outside, federal funds and outside, but is this something you'd be seeking any state funds for also, or?
At this time, we are not. Right now, it's
Okay.
just based strictly on grants or private funding. And which, we have a model out there where this works. Like I said, Louisiana has been doing this, and that's the way they do their model. Now, if the legislature decides at some point in the future to possibly look at appropriating some funds or a funding source, I'm sure that would be something we can address at that time.
Right. Well, good. Well, I like that it's preventative, and so much of what we do is reactive. So I'm very supportive of this.
We've got several that have signed up to speak to the bill, and I want to remind everyone, please make your point, but let's do it. We've got several other items on the agenda today. We have the first person to speak will be, Mark Carter. Mr. Carter, if you come forward at this time. You can go to the podium over here if you'd like to.
Yes, sir.
I believe Mr. Carter's zip code is 30180.
That is correct.
Yeah, which that means he's from Villa Rica, Georgia, which is a place that's very special and near and dear to my heart. So, Mr. Carter, we welcome you to the People's House and here in this committee. So go right ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll try and be succinct for you and acknowledge that. So my name is Mark Carter. I am currently employed as a corporate security manager for Enterprise Holdings. We are the largest rental car company in the world. I'm assigned to the Southeast. I'm based out of Villa Rica. I'm involved with all kinds of thefts, right? So whether it's customer conversions or, anytime it gets a nexus that is larger. So when it goes into frauds and multiple frauds, they contact me from my various states and areas that I cover. I am also the sitting president of the Southeast Regional Chapter of the International Association of Auto Theft Investigators, and I know that's a mouthful. I have been a member of that body since 1994 when I was working at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. So my previous career, yes, it was in law enforcement. Back in those days, we had several task forces, and we had stood up with various law enforcement agencies, auto theft units, and that sort of thing. And over the years, they have gone away for various reasons: lack of funding, lack of personnel, more immediacy in some of the crimes, that kind of thing. So we got to study, and just in my chapter alone of the International Association, we have several of these agencies that have auto theft prevention authorities, or in our case, motor vehicle crime prevention authorities. We've even shifted at IATI to recognize motor vehicle crimes are more than just the theft of the car. It's the theft of the catalytic converters. It's the entering autos. It's the fact that he mentioned broadband or bandwidth. It's the fact that when you steal a car or steal a catalytic converter, you're probably doing so in another stolen car, and you can quickly leave the jurisdiction of Villa Rica and go to Paulding County, and you can quickly leave there and come to Fulton County or whatever, right? And so the agencies themselves are very limited in the area they can cover when they're doing these investigations. I can give you briefly a couple of examples of some cases where this type thing helps. Prior to the Olympics coming to Atlanta in the 90s, when I was in law enforcement, there were 18 Chevrolet Suburbans and pickup trucks stolen in Talladega, Alabama from the fall race. And I worked a case out of Douglas County where we recovered 11 of those. Most of them were in Haralson County, Georgia.
That's not a surprise.
Correct. But we did it through a task force, right? And the task force had NICB agents assigned to it, had FBI agents assigned to it. We were able to work it. We were able to get the cars back, those 11. There were some we didn't, but we were also able to make arrests and get an effective prosecution. So another example that I would throw out just happened Friday. I don't know if any of you saw the news, but there was a car that was wrecked after a police chase over on Rockbridge Road in DeKalb County. The car was a Toyota RAV4. It had been rented fraudulently in Florida. They came up here and they were going neighborhood to neighborhood, park to park, and they were breaking into cars and they were stealing IDs from people. One of the victims in that case was the wife of a Georgia State Patrol officer. And within hours, their accounts had been cleaned out. And in fact, when the car wrecked following a chase, they recovered a cell phone, a Verizon cell phone that had already been set up and programmed in her name by these perpetrators. There's plenty of news clippings out there on it if you want to see it. So I bring that up because, again, it's not, when we say motor vehicle crimes, it's not just auto thefts. And the technology that gets applied to these investigations, we could help fill some voids in some of these agencies that don't have access to stuff like license plate recognition cameras to see where these criminals are moving to and all that. And I'll let somebody who's going to speak after me tell you a little bit more about the advantage to having those. So it fosters communication. And then the big pieces, as you mentioned, ma'am, is it gives training to law enforcement officers so that they can learn how to better investigate these cases. It also educates the public. So if you look at the model from Virginia, they've got all these different categories of task that they do, and it includes going out and handing out information. It includes putting signage up in parks. It includes talking to people about lock it or lose it, talking about VIN etching on catalytic converters, even providing resources for that to be done by partnering with businesses and the local politicians. So that's where we stand on it.
Okay. Mr. Carter, thank you for being here, and thank you for your institutional knowledge in fighting crime and what you're doing at the level you're at right now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Carter, at this time? All right, we're going to move on to Jared Coleman, if he's here. If he'll step forward. We'll give you about 60 seconds. And then you can take a few more if you need them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my name is Jared Coleman. I'm a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Current assignment is to the GBI's Gang Task Force.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've been with the unit since its inception when the governor created it in 2019. I've had the opportunity to travel across the state of Georgia as well as the country chasing these criminal street gangs that victimize the great citizens of our state. I've also provided testimony as an expert witness on behalf of the state of Georgia as well as the government of the United States and the federal court system, speaking on criminal street gangs and gang culture. I've acted as a case agent as well as a consultant on many large-scale investigations across the state. So really I've had the opportunity to see the impact of criminal street gangs across the state and kind of learn the manner in which they operate both in urban, suburban, and rural communities. I've been asked to speak to you all today to provide you with some perspective and insight on the links between these criminal organizations and auto crimes. And the motivation that really drives these criminal organizations is their ability to acquire money, gain power within their communities, and earn the respect of those around them, usually through inspiring fear. Now, the root of criminal gang activity is found in its members and associates' abilities to gain financial prowess on behalf of the gang. Within gang culture, power is really determined by the amount of wealth that one generates and is able to display. In short, the nicer the car that you have, the larger your jewelry, the more currency that you're able to display, the more power you have within these organizations. There's an expectation that one puts in work or provides for the gang financially and expands the gang's reputation by engaging in acts of violence against rivals, authority figures, or even those that oppose the will of the gang. One of the critical components in this criminal street gang economy is found within the automotive world. Now, auto thefts and the use of vehicles in gang activity really represent a driver in the criminal gang economy. In fact, in April of 2022, New Jersey Attorney General Matt Platkin issued a law enforcement directive that directed state and local law enforcement officers to engage in vehicular pursuits which had previously been prohibited now for residential burglary suspects, motor vehicle thieves, and those in possession of stolen motor vehicles. The Attorney General cited that he made this decision because, quote, in order to address crime trends, particularly an increase in violent crime and stolen vehicles. Now, in preparation for today's testimony, I reached out to some contacts that I have within the Georgia Gang Investigators Association, of which I'm a member, and I asked for information about whether or not gangs are really using stolen vehicles for their activity across the state. Some information that I got back for you in 2020 up in Cherokee County, there was a racketeering indictment that was handed down against the Nine Trey Gangster Bloods and Goodfellas gang. And this revealed that the gang was using stolen vehicles to engage in a pattern of crime across metro Atlanta. The offenses included vehicle theft and sales of those stolen vehicles, vehicle burglary, firearms theft, financial transaction card theft from those vehicles. Now, in this racketeering indictment, there were only 7 defendants included, but 117 criminal counts coming out of this indictment against 7 defendants. 2021, here in Fulton County, there was an indictment against members of the criminal street gang Duct Tape that was delivered regarding a murder in which a stolen vehicle was utilized, and later critical evidence was found in that vehicle to prove the state's case. There was another case recently where 2 gang members attempted to steal a Land Rover from a victim here in Fulton County. The victim refused to give up his vehicle, and he was shot, killed by the defendants, who then fled in a separate stolen vehicle. Once they were identified, these defendants were then linked to a series of vehicle thefts across the state as well as numerous other homicides. Additionally, there's currently an active criminal street gang investigation that involves several gang members which are utilizing stolen vehicles to then go out and steal commercial vehicles. When they were confronted by law enforcement, unfortunately, a vehicle pursuit engaged and they began to shoot at Fulton County Sheriff's deputies. These defendants were later apprehended and found to be responsible for over 100 felony offenses, including homicides, in the state of Georgia. So all of you are familiar, I'm sure, with the Georgia Gang Investigators Association survey that was done in 2019 that identified that criminal street gangs were active in 157 of Georgia's 159 counties. They were able to identify over 71,000 gang members that were operating in the state of Georgia at that time. But unfortunately, this is not an issue that's limited to our state's adult population. Just 6 months ago, September of 2022, Cobb County Police Department was conducting surveillance of a hotel where they were having a lot of vehicle break-ins and vehicle thefts. They observed 4 individuals that were starting to break into cars. They attempted to engage those individuals, and unfortunately it ended in an officer-involved use of force where one of the offenders was shot. Unfortunately, all 4 of these individuals were identified as juveniles. 3 firearms were identified inside that vehicle, and they all came back stolen. The vehicle itself was stolen. The license plate had been removed to prevent law enforcement from tracking the vehicles through their license plate reader technology. So even these youngest offenders are learning about our techniques. They're adapting to our investigative strategies. And because we're seeing these individuals evolve, we in law enforcement and our private partners have to evolve as well. In fact, we've got police departments in South Fulton, College Park, Fairburn, East Point, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the Department of Revenue, and private entities, including the NICB and CSX, are in the process of forming a multi-jurisdictional crime task force that targets ongoing auto crimes linked to criminal gangs and organized crime. To demonstrate the need for this task force, I had the opportunity to speak with a Fulton County investigator who told me that 3 out of 4 vehicles that are loaded into CSX containers in Fairburn, Georgia, were sent by rail down to the Savannah port where they're exported to Africa. Many of these vehicles are later interdicted by the Georgia Port Authority and the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol and identified as stolen or otherwise involved in organized crime. Also, this investigator noted that children involved with gangs as young as 12 and 13 years old are engaging in a pattern of carjacking and armed robberies with stolen vehicles within their communities locally. Now, my wife, she's a business leader, and she tells me that metrics are really the biggest driver in the decision-making process for you all as policymakers. So I got a couple numbers for you. According to the NICB, there were 745,000 vehicles that were stolen as of Q3 in 2022. This amounted to $6.6 billion worth of loss in that industry. The FBI said that each vehicle theft, each one that happened, represented $9,166 in loss per victim. The Department of Justice said that motor vehicle theft is the #1 most reported property crime in 2020, and unfortunately, only 17.2% of these crimes were cleared, which means an arrest was made and a defendant was actually charged in this case. So, for your consideration in this bill, the use and sale of stolen vehicles really represents a critical linchpin in the operational role of these gangs across Georgia and across the state. Motor vehicles and their role within the criminal gang world it's undeniable. There's a nexus that exists between this type of crime and the way that these organizations operate. Whether these gang members are using these auto thefts for their own financial enrichment, as a mode of transportation for other crimes, or as a strategy to avoid detection in their acts of violence against rival gang members, it's apparent that auto crimes are going to continue to be intrinsically linked to criminal street gangs in our pursuit of them. This committee and the General Assembly really has an opportunity to enact legal avenues that are going to exploit this for the sake of our citizens of this state. So thank you guys for having me up here, opportunity to appear before you, and I'd like to take any questions or points of clarification from the members of the committee.
Okay, we're gonna come back to you maybe if we have any more questions. We got 3 more people we need to hear from.
Yes, sir.
Expeditiously, Eric, Derek, and Rick. If y'all want to line up at the podium, we need to hear from you. Brevity is going to be your friend and our ally. Go ahead, say your name and.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric DeCampos. I represent the National Insurance Crime Bureau. NICB is a not-for-profit organization that is supported by 1,200 property and casualty insurance companies. We also work hand-in-hand with our member companies and Georgia state and local law enforcement to detect, prevent, and deter insurance crimes, including vehicle theft.
Right.
So you've heard some stats from NICB. The only thing I want to add to that is Georgia still ranks 9th in the nation in terms of the total volume of cars stolen. A motor vehicle crime prevention authority, like what is being proposed through House Bill 268, would help stem the rise in vehicle thefts in Georgia. This type of authority would provide funding in the form of grants to local jurisdictions for targeted efforts in areas with higher theft rates. They'll help law enforcement agencies increase the number of investigators dedicated to vehicle thefts, pay for updated equipment, and also upgrade technology that'll help increase and better coordinate sharing of information between law enforcement agencies. In addition, prosecutors can benefit from this as well, with grants typically used to help fund additional prosecutors dedicated to theft cases. Not only that, but this type of authority would also help develop public messaging campaigns and programs to help raise awareness about vehicle theft. Other jurisdictions, in fact, 13 states have enacted similar authorities, have effectively deployed training programs to teach drivers critical theft prevention techniques and created events and programmings that provide drivers with free prevention tools and information. But ultimately, the biggest beneficiary is going to be the general public, particularly those communities heavily impacted by vehicle crimes.
All right.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up.
My name is Derek Corbett. I work for a company called Pull Apart, and we're the largest privately owned auto recycler in the country, headquartered right here in Georgia. I had a big, long speech planned, but with the encouragement that silence is golden, I will stay brief.
Bless your heart.
My company is proud to work with law enforcement agencies all over the country. Motor vehicle crimes hit our bottom line, and so our motivation is to not be a victim. Folks, whether it's breaking into our yard and stealing cars or auto parts or other valuable commodities, or stealing these commodities off the cars before we get them, we are victims of these motor vehicle crimes, and oftentimes we're looked at as enablers of these motor vehicle crimes. So we have proactively partnered with law enforcement all over the country, whether it is to provide commodities like catalytic converters for sting operations, whether it's to provide space for training operations or dog training, whatever the partnership opportunity is, we're there to provide that. What we have learned is that these, auto theft prevention authorities in states around the country like Texas and Colorado and Arizona and Virginia and other states that we do business, crime rates are lower, motor vehicle crimes are lower. Much of it comes from victim education, which provides prevention. Much of it comes from enhanced bandwidth and more assets for our local law enforcement agencies, and a lot of it comes from the empowerment of the multi-jurisdictional law enforcement agencies. I could go on and on about the benefits that these types of prevention authorities provide other states, local law enforcement agencies. I'm grateful to Chairman Corbett, no relation. I'm grateful to Chairman Corbett for bringing this forward. I think it's an incredible value add for the state of Georgia. And if anyone wants to talk more about it, I hope you choose me to talk to.
We look forward to creating this, and your company writing a nice check to us. So thank you very much.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
We appreciate that. All right, next up. Again, if you could please
I'll make this 5 seconds.
There you go.
My name is Rick Barber. I'm a sergeant with the Chamblee Police Department. So the boots on the ground doing the work. Before that, I was a state trooper. There's a gentleman to my left that can attest to that, and a gentleman behind me that I actually trained. So if you want to talk to them, ask them questions, they can answer them. Currently, we're a 2-man unit because of resources. I will say we are investigating auto thefts, auto crimes. In the last 6 months, we recovered over $1 million worth of stolen cars that had fake VINs. Individuals are stealing cars, changing VINs, selling them to you out there on the public Facebook marketplace. You then realize later on you're out of $80,000 because the car you had was a stolen car. So we're trying to get this out here to educate the public, educate law enforcement officers to have the training resources to learn how to look for this stuff. Had a whole spiel, but I'll get to the bottom of it. A couple years ago, you guys probably remember we had a legit kidnapping case in Chamblee. A little kid was stolen from the hands of his mom. We have training, tools, resources that we're able to find this kid and get him back to his parents. With this authority, we can get that grant funding to give other agencies the training resources they need. Don't let your local department be the one that drops the ball and doesn't have the stuff they need. So,
Great point. Thank
other
you.
than that, if I have questions, I'll be around if you need something.
Appreciate you standing on that thin blue line. Thank you.
Amen.
All right, so now the posture of this committee, we've got one red light over here. It's number 16.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Ms. Fraser.
Thank you. I really have two questions for the GBI officer that was here. Is he still?
Go ahead now.
Your presentation was great. I could follow you all the way through. I just have a simple question as it relates to penalties. Now, I know that listening to you that it can start off stealing a catalytic converter, end up being entering a vehicle, so it could be multiple charges. So what is the highest penalty? Are they all misdemeanors? And then how long in your doing this, how long do we normally keep these perpetrators in jail before they're out again doing the same thing?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question. So to answer the first part of that, it can be both misdemeanor and felony offenses depending on what the conduct is. If the theft is valued less than, I think, $2,500 now, it's considered a misdemeanor offense. If it's valued more, it's considered a felony offense. As far as holding individuals, this is not based off of any empirical data that I have in front of me. It's purely anecdotal based on my experience on the street. We are seeing juveniles that are stealing vehicles, being involved in crime, that are being released to their parents, never going to an RYDC, and being put on probation, if it even makes it to that point in the juvenile justice side of things. Adults we're seeing held anywhere from 1 day to a couple of weeks before getting bond on these types of charges, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one last question, and I'm just going to leave that for the chairman when his turn coming back around. I just want to know from you, the officers that we are hiring, are these state troopers? Or are we training new officers to take these roles? Because from what I'm reading here, it's strictly for this task force. And so are we paying these officers out of the grant and the private funding? Are they full-time officers? And are they actually trained by the state?
This would actually be grants to local law enforcement, then they would hire, the individual would work for the local law enforcement agencies, and they could be, multi-jurisdictional.
That are already certified officers?
Yes, they would be certified officers.
Number
All right.
20, number 22 here. Who's that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish y'all to add about 3 judges to this board to put these folks in jail and keep them there when they're supposed to. Because right now there are no judges represented on this, a juvenile justice, a juvenile judge, or a regular judge, and that's where the disconnect is occurring. These people get out here and arrest these folks and do good work, and then the court either lets them go, puts them on probation, or we raise the penalty that used to be when I started in law enforcement. It's $500, and now it's $2,500. That's the disconnect in this kind of thing.
There's not a judge, but we do have the Attorney General or one of his representatives, but I'm amenable to doing that. And I had a criminal defense lawyer come to me and would like to have a criminal defense lawyer on that council as well, so we can talk about that.
We want to. Any more questions for the author of the bill at this time? I appreciate the committee's attention to this. This was a hearing-only bill. We're going to make a few tweaks and bring it back to the full committee in the next little time and try to get this finished up. My main concern is just the funding mechanism. And that was from the beginning. But, my philosophy with those federal dollars, if that goes to Colorado or California, that's pork spending. But if it comes home to Georgia, it's bacon. And I really feel that way. And if we can draw down federal dollars to fund this, I think it's a step in the right direction. So thank you, committee members. Thank you, Chairman Corbett, for presenting that. And when we're going to hear from members of the committee, if you have some suggestions, please get with me or get with the author of the bill, and let's try to get this across the finish line. The next bill that we're going to hear will be one of the governor's bills. Representative Wade will present House Bill 147. We'll be working off of LC 49-1174-EC.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate that very much. Just want to make sure I confirm LC 49-1174-EC. This is deemed the Safe Schools Act. It is a priority of Governor Kemp. But to give a little background, because I know this is the first time I presented to the Public Safety Committee, this is also something that I'm passionate about. I'm a former school board member for 15 years in the Dawson County school system, my home community, and I've got 2 children and a wife that is in a school building every day. She's an assistant principal in a middle school in my district, and she's dedicated 21 years of her life with her primary focus on not just teaching children, but to keep them safe when they're under her responsibility. So this is a continuation of the governor's commitment to keeping Georgia students safe and school personnel safe. This will modernize the school safety protocol in 2023 to include intruder alert drills. Will equip teachers with skills they need to protect students in the classrooms. This legislation has been worked on with superintendents, state agencies, education advocacy groups that represent all folks that are stakeholders in this. That's teachers, school leaders, local board of education members, folks in the law enforcement community, as well as Professional Standards Commission. And I'm going to read off my acronym salad here, if you'll forgive me, but to let you know the groups that worked with us on this. I don't want to miss anybody. I know many are in the room. Too many people texting me right now. Hold on one second. Yep, it's GIBSTIC, GEMA, DOE, Gale, Page, GSBA, and GSSA, and they have representatives, I believe, for all of those organizations are here. None of them signed up specifically to speak to the bill, but they have all provided letters. And also, Buddy Costley from Glissy sent a letter to the chairman to show his support too. And the reason that they support it is they've helped the governor's team craft this bill to strike a good balance. This is not a partisan issue. School safety and kid safety isn't partisan. I think it's our responsibility. So I want to give you the 4 parts of the legislation. It establishes, first, it establishes a voluntary school safety and anti-gang endorsement for current teachers. That's voluntary. This will be established by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission in consultation with Georgia EMA, or Georgia Emergency Management, and Homeland Security Agency, Public Safety Training Center, and the Department of Juvenile Justice. And number 2, it encourages colleges and universities with teacher preparation programs to include training and best practices for promoting and preserving safe schools and identifying deterring youth gangs. It will also ensure that school safety plans are submitted to GEMA, and it will allow the state to ensure plans are effective and are best practices. This is not an additional burden. Districts already submit these plans to their local law enforcement agency and their local emergency management agency. This will just make sure that all agencies are, as we like to say at our church, singing from the same page in the same songbook. It will also help in those very rare but completely unexpected incidents where GEMA may need to act quickly. If they've already got the school safety plans, it will prepare those officers immediately instead of having to kind of fly under the radar and figuring things out in a chaotic situation. So we believe this will benefit both local law enforcement and our state agencies. And last, we do have one mandate. You know, we're the governor, myself, and I know many of the members, we're not big on mandates, but this is something that school superintendents and teacher advocacy groups were supportive of. Lots of school systems have partnership with SROs. They were favorable. Some systems don't have SROs, but they are in agreement that doing an intruder alert drill is something that's going to benefit their awareness and make teachers better prepared for those just unexpected incidents that happen. This is the 21st century, and I mean, just look at the news this week. There's things that have happened. I mean, we've had balloons shot down across our country. Nobody anticipated that, right? So this is going to prepare them. They'll have August and September to do that, so by October 1st, and it'll help just build up a culture of safety so that when those kids are in that room, they've had the opportunity to learn and not worry about what would happen if somebody were to gain access to the campus that's not supposed to be there. That's kind of just a quick overview. I'm happy to continue to go line by line, or I'm open up for questions, whatever is your pleasure, Chairman.
Do we have any questions for members of the committee? I have a few questions I wanted to ask, but I want to let the committee members go first. Number 10 out there, who is that?
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Petrie, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. A couple of questions. You mentioned the mandate. Obviously, on line 76, we got every public school shall conduct an intruder alert drill. Couple of questions, got a few emails. Is there anything that requires these drills to be unannounced?
So
That's what they're
that's a
speaking
great
to.
question. So the local schools will have the opportunity to design those how they see fit. So they'll have the opportunity. They also have an opt-out for, I'm very heart for schools, students with disabilities. And there are even some faculty that have had life incidents that they might want to opt out of a specific drill. I know school systems, in our school, when I was a school board member, we had one family, a teacher that survived a tornado drill.
Yeah.
She was allowed not to come to work that day, but it was a traumatic experience. It was a family member was lost. So the local control will have the opportunity to design that to fit within their needs.
Got you, Mr. Chairman. If I can
Please
continue
go
just
ahead.
to make sure I'm clear, just real quickly. So there is no mandate for an unannounced intruder alert drill.
That is correct.
To be clear, because
The only
everyone here is getting these emails.
Yes, the
so
requirement
there is a
is
mandate for a drill. Now they're
Yes.
already doing these drills.
Yes.
They just aren't doing an intruder alert drill. They're already doing drills.
Many are. Some are not specifically doing this type of intruder alert drill that would.
Okay.
I could get into the weeds with you, but
We got the opt-out, that language is clear, but I wanted to be clear on this issue, on the other thing, one other issue that relates to the mandate. You mentioned that's the only mandate. On line, just to be clear, again, so that I'm clear, on line 31, all eligible certified, certificated professional personnel. So, just to be clear, is there a mandate that all of the staff receive this training?
no, it's required that anyone that wants to receive the training, that they must be an eligible certified professional personnel, be employed in a public school district, and complete the school safety and anti-gang training that will be developed by PSC, GIPSTIC, GEMA, GSPC, and Department of Juvenile Justice.
So it is indeed voluntary.
It is
In spite
100%.
of that language, I'm just, in the
Yes, sir.
interest of clarity, thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Great questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Petrie. Number 2 over here to my left. Representative Neal.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing the bill. I do have a few questions. It's kind of related to what Petrie was going through because we've been having these conversations on the side in general. So I want to, first of all, clarify definitions. So intruder alert drills versus in law enforcement side, it would be like active shooter drills. So I guess the first question is, and if anybody is here from either from Georgia Post, please advise. But to my knowledge, there isn't a requirement for law enforcement to have yearly mandated active shooter training. I think it's discretionary right now. So when it comes to that and when it comes to definitions, when you say anyone under this bill, anyone has the option to do this intruder alert drill. When you say anyone, but then there was a reference to SROs doing it. I'm confused as to who is required if currently law enforcement is not required. Does this body need to authorize or mandate yearly active shooter training first? And then this would go in conjunction with that. Does that
I
make
understand the question. I think because this is the jurisdiction of the school system and that the responsibility of that lies on the superintendent and the school board, this will give school boards the opportunity to design at the local level in partnership with local law enforcement agencies what is the best intruder alert drill that will best serve that community. So, for example, it's not just about active shooters. It could be, there are situations in which there could be a temporary restraining order against a spouse of a teacher that's not supposed to have access to campus. What do you do, right, when that person comes on site? And what is the response supposed to be? There could be an incident with a student that is not supposed to be there and they do things that they're not supposed to do. I don't want to give any specifics, but, act out, start fights, throw furniture, whatever. That could be an incident, and they want to have a specific plan to address. So the threats could be what I call minor, or they could be extremely major. I mean, you could have somebody that would I mean, I don't want to give anybody an idea, but that would want to throw Molotov cocktails into parking lots of a school, what is the incident response going to be in partnership with whoever that school safety personnel is, as well as the local SROs if they have it, but then include things like, local law enforcement as well as state agencies. I think we will accomplish the same goal by allowing the school systems to be able to design this specific to their responsibility.
So I think that's the issue. So when it comes to coordinating with law enforcement and school boards, since they are two different types of entities that handle two different things, I'm trying to understand how the school board can craft an active shooter policy that the law enforcement that are covered under another agency such as Post or Gypstick has to abide by or it's like the school board is mandating a certain type of training that only SROs have to do, but that same mandate doesn't apply to all law enforcement. So if an active shooter were to happen, the people that are outside of the school system are going to respond as well, and they all have to move as a unit. So I guess I'm just trying to, I support
Sure.
the bill, but I wanted to make sure it
Let me
works
see if I can
properly.
clear this up and provide the clarity. So
Yeah.
just to be clear, the training for certified personnel to receive this certification that will be designed by all the interagencies implementation and suggestions and design is optional. Schools can choose to identify staff that could go and receive that certificate. Like it could be just like a reading endorsement. It will be a school safety and anti-gang endorsement. Okay, that is an option that local school systems can decide. We want to identify staff. We want them to go through this training. We want them to receive a certificate to be a partner with the school safety efforts in that building. So that is optional. The only requirement is that every school system, they will be able to design their own, but they will have an incident response drill done. That could include active shooting. But to me, that's one example that if that agency feels like they need to go through that process, I believe that would be a separate legislation, because that would be touching on those agencies and their responsibility. This is specific to what school systems, and we work with GSBA and GSSA, and they are very comfortable, GLSSI, they are very comfortable that this is a best practice to ensure that they're really thinking through the potential risks and what their response to a varied variety of potential incidents. So I can tell you in the banking industry, we have an incident response drill, and we contemplate probably 75 different scenarios just for a small financial institution on what we would do as a private entity.
All right, thank you. Number 15 down here.
Good afternoon. I just have a quick question. I want to know if the bill would impact or goes to local law enforcement, or will it be city and county and local law enforcement?
Any law enforcement agency that the school system works with locally will continue to be, that's not a change. They will still receive the school safety plans as they currently do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's see, number 27 down here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of the hours, and we're fixing to start losing committee members, it's a great bill. Look through it, and I think they've done a good job with it. But at the proper time, I'd like to be recognized for motion before we lose too many of our members.
Yes, sir. Hold on just 1 second. I have a few people that wanted to speak to the bill. We got quite a few that wanted to speak. What I would like to do is get a couple of those who are against the bill. If you want to stand up and speak, state your opinion. I'd like to hear from a couple of you, please. So if you want to come forward at this time, just in full transparency, I think there's going to be an overwhelming support for this piece of legislation, because I feel like the members of the committee will move this. But if you want to take just a few moments here and tell me who you are and why you want to oppose this bill, I'd like to listen to that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I said a few. I didn't say a whole 5 or 6 or a half a dozen. So, I can define that for you if you want me to, but go ahead.
My name is Michaela Arciaga. I work for IDRA. We are an education, research, and policy nonprofit. I'm also a former high school math teacher. I hesitate to say we're here in opposition to the bill. We're just in opposition to the bill as it exists right now. We have a few concerns about some of the language that is used. I've spoken with the sponsor of the bill and expressed some of these concerns as well. But we work really closely with teachers. We are not the unions. But to create classroom-centered solutions to policy, one of the main concerns that we have is that this bill is going to inflict undue trauma on children in the form of these mandated active shooter drills. I believe the representative asked the question about them not being unannounced. Our concern is that there's not a protection against unannounced drills. There is no demonstrated benefit to an unannounced bill versus an announced drill. Especially for younger children, it's been shown to cause significant psychological and emotional damage. The other concern we have is about the gang identification and deterrence. All due respect to the agencies that are here represented, those are purely law enforcement agencies. When we're talking about dealing with gang-involved youth in schools, it's a very unique responsibility for the schools.
Okay.
We're concerned that the focus of law enforcement is on identification, detainment, and their role is very limited in the way that they might view our students. We want to make sure
got a couple more
that
people
it's
behind you back there.
purely inclusive of the way that we view our children and not focused exclusively on labeling and misidentification for gang-involved children.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, my name is Mason Goodwin. I'm with the Georgia Youth Justice Coalition, and I'm actually a graduate of the state. I attended Atlanta Public Schools, and I specifically wanted to speak to the concern around not announcing these drills, because I'm one of those students that has grown up in this generation where I don't know a reality, which these drills haven't been done since I've attended school. I can say that these drills, when unannounced, when unperformed, can lead to traumatic responses, anxiety, depression out of students. And I would push for an amendment that requires school systems to announce these drills prior to the alert of the drill, and also to notify parents a week before the drill occurs, because I do think that parents have the right to know what drills are occurring inside their school system. I'll keep it at that.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more against, and then we're going to close the public comments.
Okay, if you're only taking one more, I would like to defer my comments to the Teacher of the Year back here.
Go right ahead. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this hearing. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about my students. My name is Tracy Nance. I'm the 2020 and 2021 Georgia Teacher of the Year. I traveled the state for 32 months, meeting with educators and students and families. What I'm concerned about this bill is the focus on the identification piece and the fact that teachers' plates are full. Any training that educators receive, I worry that it would be on having teachers police their students and looking for signs, when what kids really need are affirming practices. There's a saying that I have in my classroom when I'm working with new teachers. I tell them, if you don't give kids something to do, they'll find something to do. And so if we really want to look at public safety and preventing gang involvement, let's increase extracurriculars. Let's increase those school-to-home connections. Let's give kids something better to do with their time. The data is very, very clear about the link with reading scores and later on incarceration. 85% of students who are incarcerated later on did not have proficient reading skills. So let's focus on teaching our kids the skills they need. Let's focus on training educators how to work with different communities across difference, right? Let's train them how to bring in affirming practices that honor their students' backgrounds, that honor the families. What we do know is that no parent looks at their baby and says, oh, you're gonna be a great little gangbanger. That doesn't happen, right? So let's spend our time uplifting kids, uplifting teachers, and giving them the tools they need. Educators do not need anything else on their plate. And we certainly don't want to be charged with policing our kids.
We appreciate you being here and sharing your feelings. Well, at this time, we're going to, let's see, number 27 down there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to the comments, and I certainly do respect what they're saying. But, you know, in the case of an active shooter, they don't announce they're going to be an active shooter, quite frankly. And I think this is one of the things that we need to do is train these, both the educators and the teachers, to be prepared in case there's a case of an active shooter. And if, you know, this new day and time we live in, well, it doesn't work that way when an active shooter or an emergency transpires at a school. And what we want to do is try to train these train our youth and the teachers to identify and to move forward and to be prepared in the case of an emergency.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tend to agree with you on that. Any further discussion? I'm going to call the question here in just a moment. If we could, the board would quit lighting up. Number 16, who is that?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. Where is it in the bill that say unannounced?
It does not. It doesn't.
It doesn't
It
say
does not.
announced.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Number 25, there's a comment over here. Ms. Evans.
Thank you so much. For the certification, would you anticipate it would be teachers or SROs that would be pursuing this? Or social workers? Or could it be anyone at the school? Or
So it can be anybody that is an eligible certified teacher or administrator that's within that building. What I would anticipate after speaking with the superintendents and that I've discussed this with, they have some teachers that have, in my case, we're close to a military college. We have folks that come back, served in our military, but they may have a math or a social studies or a science background, but they have an interest in being the public safety officer for their school. What this will do is to ensure that now they've got that certificate that is transferable as a set skill that has a relevant and rigorous curriculum behind earning that certificate so that it's uniform across the state. So that's what actual educators, not to push back too much about the folks that had concerns. I respect their concerns, and I believe actually the legislation is very amenable to those concerns because we do have options for local school systems to design these themselves. And that means if that community is very, extremely concerned about if there is one of the incident drills is an active shooter and they want parent involvement, this state has a school board system and superintendent system that will work to design that for their community that's going to best serve. But there are some systems in which they may want to have an unannounced, but it may be an unannounced situation where somebody's wandered in off the street that isn't supposed to be in the building, and it's not a direct threat as far as an active shooter drill, but it could be an attempted kidnapping, which would be something where, weapons aren't involved, but gained access is involved. And what do you do in order to make sure that you're not causing chaos so that you can have a banking security background so that you could basically cut off a wing of a school building or make sure that person was isolated until law enforcement could get there. Schools need to have that flexibility, and this legislation would allow that. And I could see some SROs that might want to get that certification, but most of those are law enforcement employees. So I don't think that would be somebody unless they had an interest in becoming a teacher, which is possible.
I'm going to make this statement, and if you've got local law enforcement that doesn't have training there's a bigger issue there.
That's right.
It doesn't. I think the day and time we live in, I don't think it's going to be up to the state to mandate active shooter training to those departments because you lost his last year's Easter egg if you're not offering that. All right. At this time, we're going to recognize Chairman Powell for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the members of the committee, I recommend this bill move forward with a due pass recommendation.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Appreciate it, committee.
We've got one more piece of legislation that we need to look at. It's one more bill, House Bill 142. Representative Misha Maynor is going to present that bill to us.
You guys should have some, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to present the bill. And I'll make this really quick. So the AUCC is composed of Clark Atlanta, Spelman College, Morehouse, and Morehouse School of Medicine. And right now, in your packets, you have a letter from Legislative Council. This is just saying this only impacts schools that are in a consortium, so no school in the University System of Georgia nor any school in the Technical College System of Georgia is impacted. In fact, the only schools in a consortium in the nation is the AUCC. So this bill, because of how the law was written initially, it put the AUCC at a disadvantage. Also in support of this bill, in your packet, you have a letter that was signed by every president of each university that I just named. This bill passed out of the House last year, it passed out of the Senate last year, but on sine die, we missed the agree-disagree.
Gotcha.
So it's the exact same bill that I would like your favorable vote for today. All it says is that since the AUCC is in a consortium, all of the schools are connected. So if a police officer from Morehouse sees a crime on Spelman's campus, right now they actually can't help. And so all of the colleges have said, we would like to combine all of our schools' law enforcement into the Atlanta Unified Police Force. And I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, number 9. Okay. Representative Jackson.
I was gonna recommend a do pass, but I do have one question. This bill, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would be economically feasible. It would help save money because it would combine law enforcement for all the campuses at the AU Center. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I should have mentioned I have Dr. Syed Sewell. He is from the AUCC Foundation overseeing all of the activities of all of the colleges here in support of the bill as well.
Good. All right. Any more questions at this time? All right. There being none, what would be the desire and will of this committee?
Do pass.
Make a motion.
Is there a second? A motion and second that we do pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Okay.
Thank you so much.
There being no more business before this Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, I now declare us adjourned. I'd like to remind members we have a meeting in the morning at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock.